this debug thing would work.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, the debug thing that we are trying out would not work if we define it separately as a script. So what we need to do is define it as a test function inside our module. So yeah, that is what we will do today. And we will be setting up our local system, this thing that we discussed last time. So I have just created a small gist here on GitHub. I am just sharing this with you and also sharing my screen. Um, I'm just pasting it here. I'm sharing my screen. Give me a second. Yeah, this one. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen. So basically, this is the site that you need to go to. This is the Aptos CLI that we are installing. If you want to install, you can actually even install like a basic move CLI as well. You can do like a pre-built a binary file as well. All of these things, but the simplest way to get started with Aptos Movelang would be to use the Aptos CLI because over this we can run a lot of different functions. Like we can publish from here, we can create our own like wallet profile from here. We can run tests here. We can also set it on like change the settings to like the networks from mainnet, devnet, local, custom, whatever. And yeah, we can work around very easily here as mentioned. So if you move to the screen, I'll actually also open it in the meantime. My system configuration is a Kali Linux, so I would say that it is quite easy for me to like do all of these installation stuff. People who are on Windows, you might be having a little bit of difficulty with making the installation work, but don't worry, feel free to like drop any sort of this thing wherever you're stuck. If you're facing any errors. So yeah, this is the screen that we have opened. And first check for this Python 3.6 plus. So yeah, if you already have it, just do a version check. If you haven't installed, you can go to python.org and install it. I would not take a lot of time to do all of these things because I believe a lot of you folks are already quite advanced in your smart contract journey. So this should not be an issue. And then for the installation for Aptos CLI on Linux, Mac OS, Windows, all of these steps, etc., are mentioned over here. So yeah, it's just like a very simple curl call that they're doing for a Python script through which you're just setting up this CLI. So I'm just gonna wait for a few minutes, but once you're done, if you run something like Aptos, I don't think you'll be able to see my entire screen right now, but if you just run something like just this Aptos, you will be able to see the output from the CLI. So yeah, I'll just give you folks 5 minutes to set this up. If you have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat. But once you set it up, we can then move ahead with the rest of writing our scripts and all of that stuff. Any difficulties that
This meeting is being recorded.
the final result should look something like this. Give me a second. Let me see if I can share my terminal window. Folks who have been able to install this, feel free to like let us know that this is working. It's not working. I think this is the terminal. A lot of errors for me, but yeah. So if you do something like Aptos, it should give you an output like this. once you're done with your setup. Is done, you can actually just
This
do a
meeting
normal.
is being recorded.
You can just do a normal curl call over it. From access, you need to use brew after the curl command. Okay. Mm. Uh, Let me give you the command. Give me a second. Yeah, you can do any of these. I would suggest you to also install curl as well as wget because both of these things would be very helpful later on as well. Curl, especially if you're working around any sort of API endpoints, would allow you to ping. Mm, I would always suggest any sort of Linux system over Windows, but I do have some sort of a affinity towards Linux, so I'm not sure it works the best for everyone. In terms of the Aptos setup, I think you should be able to fairly do fine with Windows as well because, um, yeah, there's not a lot of uh, main packaging stuff that involves a lot of like heavy this thing. So I think you should be fine. But yeah, as a preference, I would always suggest Linux. Uh, I'm just checking also this brew install Aptos as suggested by Talil. If this package has the same version as compared to what you will install from the curl, because the curl will give you directly from the Aptos dev site. This brew package would need to be maintained by the external. stakeholder. If you have installed it Tailwheel with the brew command, can you let me know if the version is 2.1.0? That's I think the latest one that you get from here as well. For reference for other folks who have installed, you can run a aptos space hyphen B to get the version. I'm gonna type it here as well. Aptos space hyphen B. This will allow you to get the version, and it should be 2.1.0. So I made a mistake. Uh, okay, perfect. I made a mistake and I ended up with like, because mine was not updated since like last 4 or 5 months or something. It was at one point something, and like it was just crashing continuously, and I was just beating my head over like what happened. Why is this not working? When I hit Aptos update, it is not. Okay, I think it should be working. Check as well. Mine does give me the result that CLI is up to date. Command not found. I think your Aptos is not installed correctly. Uh, Suleka. So one thing that might have happened is that it's not able to get the location where it is. But did you install it on Windows Suleka? There is a probability that you'll have to do something like whatever that path is, you will have to add it in the path variable to set it. Otherwise, it probably might not understand that this is the Aptos that you're referring to. Let me send you some reference as well. Can you confirm? So, like, if this is, if you are, if you're doing it on Windows, or where you're doing it. Yeah, actually, sure, this thing is fine. Uh, Suleika, do you want to share? What's the scene for your listing? I'm just putting this for people whose path is not being able to be. Okay, cool. Then that's great. Okay, perfect. Uh, okay, so now that this is installed, what we'll do is that we'll set up a new project. I'll just share my screen again with the gist. Or actually, I can even just do a new setup as well. Give me a second. Let me know if you can see my screen. So I'm gonna do an upload mode edit. That's the command. Yeah. I'm gonna type in my name and something I can name this. Okay. And I can just click enter. It just give me a result success, and I can do a CD into this. Uh, Let me check. Where is it? Okay, I think I'm already CD'd in it. Okay, can you folks just run this command? You'll end up with basically our directory structure, something like this. Ignore this debug folder, I have created it. So you'll end up with these files, move.toml script sources and tests. Can you folks confirm? I'll just paste here the command that you're running as well. Aptos move init hyphen hyphen name, whatever, like 3 is what I've named it. It already CDs in, by the way. You don't need to do a CD. You can just do a ls and you can check what is there in this directory. Okay, so if we are cool with this, I'm gonna actually just go on and clean up this directory a bit because I don't need these files. I already have uh, the ones that I want created for me. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete it. What I'm gonna show you right now is next is my main screen to give you an idea for how it looks. But before that, can I just get a confirmation for folks that this is working? So after you install your Aptos CLI, I just want you to run this Aptos move init name directory. This is to create a new project. It will automatically set it up with a couple of folders similar to what we saw in our playground, which is our test files, our script files, and our sources files, along with the move.toml file, which is basically our main configuration. Is this cool for everyone? Okay, cool, perfect. Okay, so now I think we can actually go into sharing the screen as well. Let me know, folks, if you can see my screen. Okay, so ignore a couple of the things here. These are things that I've set up myself, things that I've deleted and cleaned up. You would be probably able to see a sources, a scripts, a test, and a move.toml. I have removed the scripts, I've removed the test. I just have the sources and the move.toml file here. You can do the same or you might not, it's on you. I'm just doing it for simplicity. So that's it. And in the move.toml file, the next thing that we have to do is, if you remember our like previous class, what we did with the playground and quantum, when you were trying to run things, it was basically telling you that there is no profile created for it and you can't run it, right? You needed an address to basically run it out. So we will do something similar here. We'll be setting up our own profile, just like how we did over there, where you have to specify devnet. We will be setting up our own profile here, and the way that we'll do is by running this particular command. I'm just gonna set it up. So this is also a way for like folks to also, you can like instead of always creating new, you can also like uh, if you have certain private keys and all of your existing wallets, you can also import them back here as well. So you can try again with this command on your CLI, which will help you set up your account. Let me show how it looks as well. Give me a second. I'll stop sharing and move to my terminal screen now. Mhm. Yeah, so if you can see my screen, I'm just gonna go back to this. It's gonna be Aptos init hyphen hyphen network dev net, like enter. So it's saying that you have already initialized a profile default. I have already done it once, right? Do you want to override the existing config? For this sake, I'll say yes, let's do it. Um, if you have some already private key, you can put it. If no input, then it'll generate a new one for me. So I'm just gonna do a new one. So it is now creating my account and it has created my account. set it up for this particular one. Okay, so what I can do here is just copy this. Okay, can I get a yes or something, reaction or something in the chat so that I know that okay, we are at pace with what is going on, and if not, I can slow it down a little bit. Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, so what we're gonna do now is just we're gonna copy this, and what we're gonna do is that this move.toml file is basically where we're defining all of our named addresses. So last class we discussed that in move we in when we talk about addresses, we talk about named and the numeric addresses, and it is generally frowned upon to use the numeric addresses directly in your modules, right? So what we will instead do is that we'll first define the address in our move.toml file. I'll just show you how we're doing that. Give me a second. Where is our screen? Okay. So if you can see here, we have this addresses that we are defining here. So you can just copy paste this much. I'm just okay. First, let me I don't, I think it'll be the same one. Yeah, okay. So I just modified the address here with the one that I got from my terminal command. And I've also just defined the standard libraries here, 0x1 that will be used for debug and all. So you can use a similar notation. And this chunk of stuff you can just copy um, and paste. I'm also gonna paste it in our chat. You can name it something else as well. You can name this address as your name and then address or something else for that matter, whatever you feel like. It's just a notation that you're following so that we can, whenever we define in our module, we can use this instead of the current notation. So are things clear up till this point? Once so this change that I've just pasted here for reference needs to be made in the move.toml file, as you can see in my screen how this looks. So you can just add this chunk of code in your move.toml file. The std libraries refer to the standard libraries which are always in 0x1 address I had showed you the last time. All of the different modules that are attached to 0x1, all of the Aptos coin, fungible tokens, staking, voting, and all of the simpler string debug functions, everything is always attached back to the 0x1 address in Aptos, right? So we will just be using this named address for mentioning 0x1 here for our sake of understanding. Okay, is this clear? Can we move to the actual coding part now? Okay, perfect. All right, so now moving back to writing our piece of code. So just give me 1 minute. Okay, so the last time what we were focusing on was along the lines of writing just the scripts part where we just wanted to print a certain number, right? But the debug function was not working. I'm just gonna switch and show you what do we have now and how does it actually look different than what you were trying to do. Okay, so what you're trying to do is pretty much this function that I have defined over here. I would ask you not to look at this code for now. It might be confusing at this point, so I'm just gonna comment a couple of these things out. Don't look at this code. I will show you when I run this though to just give you an idea of what is happening, but do not focus on what is this type or what is all of this. You can just like not worry about that now. But what we discussed previously in our class, I'm just gonna write a couple of things down here for reference. So modules are basically libraries, right? This is what we discussed. And when we are talking about scripts, they are just like normal entry or executable function, right? So what you're trying to do was like write our debug or print statements in scripts, which is what is like suggested in all the move books as well, but it doesn't work fine on the Aptos sense. Uh, might be working fine when you're talking about the normal move lang, but it doesn't work fine on the Aptos side of things. So what we are doing now is that we are defining a module, and within this we are defining a test function. Okay, and the way that we are doing is very simple. So now we'll just go over it. So just like how we saw previously in our script, so this debug module my address, meaning that this module belongs to this particular address, which is my address that we defined back in the move.toml file, which is replaced with your address in your respective systems. The name is called example, okay, and it uses the Aptos standard libraries debug function, which is the 0x1, if you remember, right? And then the way we have defined this to be a test is by having this hash, then followed by this square brackets test. And again, we are passing this account, this thing here, simply because we are also using this as a parameter here. There is no need for this here. I can write a separate function without keeping any of these things, removing this, and just simply printing things out. That would work fine as well. But it is good to keep the account or these kind of things to just see who is calling the function, what is happening, right? So I'll show you how also it looks. We have for this argument, like one good thing that you can do through tests is that you can be anyone. You can act like a person who has a permission level for a particular function, as well as a person who does not have a permission level for a particular function, and try testing out 2 or 3 different instances for certain function that should be allowed for some people and should not be allowed for some people. So that's the benefit of having this. So although we are the ones who have deployed this address, still you can in account pass this to be like anyone, and then you can kind of see that address that is being passed here as well. It would not show our move.toml address, but what it would end up showing is basically 0x1 in this situation. Okay. Now, coming to how this syntax looks, we discussed the public and the fun thing previously as well, followed by the name of the function. But we have this entry here defining that this is a entry level function, right? And then we have just defined a variable here, which is like an unsigned integer, or 0 to 2 raised to power 8 minus 1 should be the value, which we discussed last time as well. 0 to 255, it would not be able to accept a higher number than that. In that case, you will have to move from U8 to U16 or something above that. Okay, and then we have this debug print statement, which is like a general print statement, like nothing too interesting or exciting here. Okay, so if we are clear on this couple of things, um, let me actually remove all of these things and actually just uncomment and give you this piece of code to copy and put in your system as well. For an exercise, I would suggest to write this code, like, not just do a control C, control V, but to write this code completely, because that will help you like build a proper idea of like starting to like code this up, right? Because the syntax here is a lot different than what you would see in anything like in any other like languages. So it is compared, like Rust might be very close to it, but other than that, I would be more inclined that you just take this and write this from the scratch. In the meantime, I'll just also switch back to my terminal screen and then show you how we can run this function. Hey everyone. Okay, I am just cleaning up a lot of the code that is unused warnings that I have. But okay. Can you folks give me an understanding of if you are through with writing this bit? Also, Alice is asking in the chat, what does the entry keyword mean? Just to say that this is the entry main function. Essentially, when we were writing in script, right, we discussed that in that script we have this main function. Um, this is the main executable function. Just to distinguish between that, we are adding this entry modifier here. Nothing else as such. I can also maybe share something around this. Give me a minute. If something is marked not with an entry, like then you can basically find something on the docs as well to share. In the meantime, folk, can you give me an understanding for people who also want to understand where we have to create it? So in sources, you can create a new file. You can name it whatever xyz.move, and in this you can just copy paste this or write it from scratch as well, which would be a better way of doing it so that the syntax would be like something that you get more and more comfortable with if you start writing it from scratch. Just give me a heads up uh, if this is clear or something. If we can move ahead. So once you write this, the next step here would be along the lines of running the Aptos move compile um, line. It'll just help you understand if there are certain issues in the code. If you can see here, these are a couple of things that are popping when I do the same. And interesting things that we need to do to try to see and try to break the syntax would be if I, for example, remove a semicolon and if I try to run this thing again, what will happen? It does still work. It is very similar to Golang in terms of this. What happens if I end up uh, removing like an ampersand or something when we are looking at the code? What is the error that you can expect? So yeah, these are a couple of things that you can experiment with just to see what is working, what is not working. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The fetching git dependency part would be a bit slow for the first go. It's what our quantum thing was also doing every time we were trying to do like run and build. Hey, hi folks. I'm just like waiting for you folks to get done. Just randomly running the same commands over. Okay. Yep. This is the output that we want. Uh, yeah. Cool. Okay. So I think for the next thing that we can run would be just our actual test function. So what you can run right now is Aptos move test. This will basically give the output that you want. Can you once run this function and share the output? I'm just cleaning up cache. Yeah, perfect. So if you can see in the first two sentences, we have this as the output. I'm just cleaning up a couple of things in my code. Yep. Ignore a couple of these outputs. What is important for us will be the 0x1 and 23 that you can see over here, which is basically our debug statements. So, okay, so now that we have this particular piece of code set, what I want to do next is to actually start going into a couple of the functions that we can write around, just basically creating like a small subtraction, addition, and all of these operations that we can run. And we can also see a couple of other things that we can do as well. So I want you to start writing like maybe we should just write over here as well. So just how we have defined this entry function here, what you can actually do is start writing your own functions here as well. So let's say you want to define a function for adding two numbers, okay? And the way that you can oh, I'm sorry, I think I'm sharing my other screen. Wait. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, so here we are just defining another function for adding two numbers. Okay, so we have A, which I'm defining as a U8. We have B, which I'm defining as a U8. Uh, I'm just creating this. And what I'm going to say here is that A plus B is what I want, right? But the thing that we want to keep in mind when we are writing code in Move is that we cannot write something like A plus B and a semicolon here. This will actually throw an error. So this is this return statement essentially that we are writing over here. And in that return statement, which will be like basically like the last statement for any function, whatever is being returned, you cannot actually have a semicolon here. Otherwise, it will actually throw error in terms of your compilation. And I'll just show you how this looks as well. Mm. Let me show you. Let me stop sharing. Okay, so I changed um, this to be return a plus b colon. And if you see here on my terminal, it's giving me this error of an invalid return. So I can basically write it as just, I can write it as a plus b or a plus b colon, but whenever whatever the return statement is, you cannot write a semicolon over there. I think it has to do with the fact that it seems like you're terminating the event, but it needs to be carried on forward to the next function wherever that is being returned. So this is something that is not the case here for moveland. So okay, so this is basically one thing that we need to keep in mind. But moving back to our code, um, so a couple of things that I also want to show that is going to happen here. So I'm just returning this as a plus b. That's it. And let's actually define a new test function here as well. So I'm just going to copy this test function and paste it here. Just ignore all of these things, remove these things, I don't need them. And what I do need is, let's say we have a C which is also here a U8, and it should basically give us the output for our addition that we are making here. And let's say here we can just pass numbers 5 and 6 for our test function, and we can just debug and print our C. Okay, and let's say this is debug x, we can make it add x. Okay, so this is the new function that we have written here to just get the output for adding these numbers. Let's just try to run this and see how it works. Sorry, forgot this. Yeah. Okay, can you folks try to run this? You will encounter something interesting here, and then maybe you can tell me what am I doing wrong in this. This is basically the function that we are defining for adding. Let me paste it here. But this function is not accurate, which you will understand once we try to run this particular function next. So basically, in our adding function that we have defined here, we have given the, this is a and this is b, and this a plus b needs to be returned back. But what we have not specified here is what should be the return type back of what is being returned. So this is the way you have to actually give the idea of like what is being returned back um, from this function. So yeah, this is the way you can actually modify for this to work. And that is when you will have this syntax not being allowed, because this would obviously be the return, so colon semicolon would not be allowed. Okay, can you folks let me know if this is working, not working? What's happening? I'm editing this function, the edited version also. I'm pasting it over here for reference. So this is the edited version where we are saying that U8 data type is again being returned back, and then you cannot have a semicolon over here because this is the return statement and it cannot have a semicolon in it. Is Does this make sense? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, does this make sense? Running this out. Okay. I don't know what numbers you have passed, but yeah, if this is if it adds up to 15, then that's perfect. This is the right uh, expected output that you can see from Alice, that this is working as expected. Now, I would love to experiment with some different numbers here. Let's say what happens if instead of 5 or 6, we try to pass numbers like 500. Can anyone say what will happen if I try to run this with A being 500 instead of 5? Okay, I want to take a minute here and ask you folks if you have any questions this far in the simple functions and all that we are working with. Are there any questions on how? Okay, perfect. It will throw an error for you. Okay. So how do we actually go about solving for this error? So one thing that I want to highlight is why would it throw an error? It will throw an error because U8 will take results between zeros to 255, correct? And that is what we are also allowing here, right? Let me actually write it here. Okay. U8 will take 0 to 255, which is why when we are saying A is 500, then it's going to be wrong, right? So A cannot be U8 in that case. It needs to be something higher than that, right? We can take it to be U16, but let's make it a bigger number actually, just for the example to come out a bit better. So if I'm modifying this to be a U64 instead of a U8, then it can obviously take like this or even a much higher number for that matter, right? But if you're saying that this is a big number, then our data return data type should also definitely be a U64, right? So our function is now modified in this manner. I'm just gonna do a control S over it. And when we have defined our C over here, if you try to run this without updating this C, you will also run into some sort of an issue because you're trying to push a much bigger this thing like this, and this does not match. So you will just make it a U64. Okay, so now we have made a couple of changes to our code over here. What will happen if we try to run this now? Does anyone want to try and tell me what will happen if you try to run this code now? Okay, someone has messaged me that it says error cannot add different types. Are other folks also getting this as the error? Anyone wants to share what error is coming? What is essentially happening here is that we have A, which is of U64, but we have B, which is still U8. So when we are trying to add A and B, it is throwing us an error because it is again incompatible for us to add both of these numbers. In some languages, this is not going to be an issue, but for Movlang, this is an issue where you have to actually explicitly change its data type. So we talk about implicit data type conversion, we talk about explicit data type conversion, right? Some languages do it implicitly, you don't need to explicitly specify stuff. But in this case, you do have to explicitly specify stuff, which brings us to this keyword that we will be using that can help us basically make this thing work. So we can keep our model as defined just like this. But one thing that we need to change, like we have to allow this B to be taken not as just like the this U8, but it needs to be taken as a U64. Okay. Let me actually share my terminal screen once for the folks who have not got this error like this so far. I just want to show you how it looks. If you haven't come this far, it's just giving something like this. You can just take a look. It will say it's not compatible, and this kind of a this thing is not allowed. And the way we will be modifying it to take this would just be over B. Okay, can you folks let me know if I should proceed with showing that? Just a quick yes or something would help. Okay, perfect. Uh, 1 second. Yeah. So we have this A plus B that we are returning, but here we need to actually say that explicitly that B needs to be returned as a U64. So we'll get something like this basically, which we can try again testing, running if this is working. So this is called the as keyword, and it allows us to run our be to be considered explicitly as 64, and once you try running this you will get 506 as the response. I'll show you from my screen as well, the terminal screen as well. So you just need to write b as 64 for it to take that. Let me show you my terminal screen. Where it go? Okay, yeah, right over here. So if you can see, you can get the debug statement here as 506. I added 500 plus 6. And the code change that I made was, let me copy paste it here as well. This is the as keyword that allows us to explicitly convert the data type in Moveland. Yep. It is quite, it is derived from this. So as I said, the properties that you would find different is mostly along the lines of the assets and how they are defined. That is the thing, and that is, I think, what people were doing for the longest time on Rust. Like they were defining it themselves, the developers were defining it themselves, but here it is something that is kind of inbuilt. Okay, so if everyone is through with this, like if someone can just let me know if you're through with this, we can move on to the next couple of syntax stuff here as well. Okay, cool. So now that we are through with all of this stuff, I'm just gonna actually remove a couple of these things here and open this to cover a couple of more functions that you can write. One assignment that we can do for today can be a couple of different sort of computations around just mathematical computations that you can do. And that would allow us to like test out a couple of these things. Um, so one thing that we can, well, two things actually, I think that we can take up other than this. I would not go in lot into this because I feel like these are just like more simpler functions, and we do not need to discuss a lot around how any of these function. But what I do want to talk around would be the if else condition, which looks something like this. We have defined like a max function as well as the while loop condition. So these are like two or three conditions that are something that we should definitely look into in terms of the syntax and how that works. I'm just gonna actually share this as well for you folks to create and run. So this is the function that I'm sharing with you. Uh, can we print a string like help or listen? Yeah, we can print a string, but it's not going to be a main like basic data type that we use. So it is going to be coming from the std library, the Aptos standard library, and we'll have to import it and like that's it. Like, and we can just print it off. But it is like it is best that right now we work around the primitive data types, and then we will be working around structs and stuff later on. So that is when we can start using the strings as well. So first of all, let's start off with this while function. So this while function is just a very simple function, which is doing a summation, um, and it is going up to 11. So it's just adding up the numbers. It's like doing 1 and then a 2 and then a 3. 1 plus 2 plus 3. It's doing something like that, and it's going up to 11. Can anyone send me what would be the, can't see the while code. Is my screen visible? This is the while code. Oh, am I sharing the terminal? Is it? Wait. Okay, this is the while code. So can anyone actually write a test function for this? Just a simple test function that we can use here. Instead of doing it for 11, like have a half specified, can anyone write a variation for it to take a variable instead of this and go up till there? And we can pass it in the test function. What should be the variable here? So something like not to 11 while n, and this should be defined here. How will that function look like if we have to write it? Does anyone want to take a shot? We will be covering after this a little bit around structs, generic structs, and a couple of ownership things. I think that could possibly be the end of the class. And from next class, we can actually start writing resources as well as uh, defining a couple of the operations that happen, like moving assets and stuff. Okay, while and U8. Okay, U8. Okay, Manishan, can you also help us with a test function for this?
No, ma'am, I don't know.
Okay, anyone else wants to try with a test function for this? Basically, the entry executable function. Like how we have something like this here. How will that test function look like for your code? While test. And we can have this, what's the name of your while n, I think, right? While n. And it will take a certain number, let's say 13. And it will just print off the result. This will be approximately what this while test function would look like. Can you
U8, ma'am.
try? Sorry?
U8.
U8, right, U8. So let's modify this to be U8. Okay, so we can actually try out with this test function. Run this and we can actually see the output as well. So I'm gonna modify my function as well to take instead of 11, let this be n, which is a U8, and then run this and then test this. And can anyone tell me what would be the output if we try to do that? Can anyone tell me what's the output?
Ma'am, what is the input?
13 is the input. You can input something else as well, but right now I'm asking the answer for 13. So what you're calculating is basically 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way till 13. It's actually something, if you folks are, if you folks remember what we were doing back in school days,
Taking to
um,
n plus 1 by 2.
yes, exactly. It's just that. So it's going to be 13 into 7, which will be giving us 91. But this is the output that I want, not from this calculation that you can run mentally, but through your program itself with this loop thing that you're doing. Okay, so are things clear up to this point? Should we move forward with the structs? Okay, cool. Okay, so now that we are a little bit like we have certain understanding around the basics of move lang and how the syntax works, and you started writing a little bit of code here and there. We can now move into writing structs. Okay, so what I want you to do now is create a new file in sources. I have created it as fellow given we are doing our Aptos fellowship, so it makes the most sense to create like a fellow sort of a thing. I'm just using a debug statement and I've defined like an empty struct here just to show you that you can define an empty struct. It is allowed, but the way that you have to do it is that you have to use this empty this thing. So Yeah, so you can basically define empty structs as well. That is not a problem. And then I have defined a couple of these functions here. So we'll start from the very basic. Okay. For now, I'm gonna remove whatever is written over here. So just ignore that. We will come to what this means, what it does later on. But think of it just as a simple struct. The way that the syntax works is struct, the name of the struct, and we have this parenthesis in which we have defined whatever would be the attributes and what would be the type of the attributes. Okay, so here we have defined the fellow ID, which we have defined as U64, age, which we have defined as U8, obviously because age is a smaller number, and whether this person is building in the bear market or not. Okay, so which we have defined as a boolean over here. Okay, so yeah, so this is basically the structure of our struct. You can choose to add any more attributes if you want to here. If you don't want to, that's fine. Basically, the way that you want to do it. And now I want to show you how we can actually start you making use of this struct as well. So we have defined a constructor here, which just says public fun new fellow. Okay, where we have again defined whatever would be our parameters, ID, age, and I have not wanted to write like this big attribute name, so I just wrote bib, which we know is a boolean, right? And it would return us back the data type fellow, because now this is a struct meaning that this is kind of our user defined data type, correct? Which will contain all of this. So we are saying that it will return a fellow, which is what we want as well, a new fellow, right? And it's returning the fellow with ID age built in where colon web. So you might question what is this, like why is these two not been written and why is this written? So the reason it's been done in this way is because if you compare our new fellows parameters with the actual like name of the attributes, it's the same for ID, it is the same for age, but it's different for build in there, as you can see here. So I can pass these directly as it is in ID and age because it's named the same. For example, if I change this to SID and S age or BID or B age, something like this, right? Then I would need to write it again here as like this, just like how I did for build in there. But if I'm just passing it exactly, I don't need to modify it. I can just write it as the same. ID goes ID, sorry about that, age goes age, and bib here is a built in there, and it is like passed through bib, and we are just returning. So this is the way that we have defined this public constructor. You can ignore this struct and this new class for now. It's something that we will be discussing. But first of all, I just want you to introduce to the concepts of this normal struct that we have defined here, the constructor for that struct, as well as a couple of more functions. So I think for the start, maybe you can start writing this struct. First, I'm going to wait for a minute for you folks to write. I'm also going to paste this code here for your reference, so you can also start writing as well. Are there any questions or any confusions? Have you folks started writing your struct definition and the public constructor that is mentioned here? Hi Alice. I see we use a return keyword here. What happens? I don't think anything would happen because it automatically assumes that that is the thing that is being returned. So if you see previously in how we defined our addition functions as well, we just did a plus b. That's it. So I think it should work just fine. Hi folks, can you tell me if um, we have defined up till this point? The constructor, no. Okay, great, Mani. Like the fact that you have created your own uh, definition for this. For this string, you will have to use a use statement for it to come. Okay, so let's move forward. I do also want to hear from other folks who are on the call. I am not sure if you're following from the beginning itself. Yeah, Akhilesh, we will be getting into this in the ownership part of things. How the scope works for the variables move works quite interestingly in this manner, because the variables that we have mentioned here are actually owned within the scope of a particular thing. Like we are saying that the function kind of owns. Yes, that's what I'm coming to. So we define the function owns the variables. The scopes are defined again by whatever would be the type, and just like how we see on C programs as well, right? The parenthesis is basically the scope for that particular variable. And here we are not talking about that means that the variable we talk something about call by value, sorry, pass by value, pass by reference, and these things, right? When we're talking about other languages, but here we have a very interesting understanding of variables being owned, and which is where this word move and move land comes from, because variables have ownership as well in a particular scope wherever they are defined, which is what I'll come to after we complete the structs thing. So yeah, let's just first complete the structs example, and then we can move over there. Okay. Okay, so coming back to our code, so yeah, so we have defined this struct fellow, then we have defined this new fellow. Now I want to write like one simple function here, which is gonna say public func, and then we want to get the ID for a particular fellow. Okay, so fellow, and then this ID, because we have defined it to be a U64, the return type would be U64. We'll just pass the fellow itself here and we'll return the ID. So this is the function that we want to do. But once you try to run this, you might have something interesting to see. So yeah, let me just put this in the chat. You can see here is the entry function at the last as well. This is just for the fellow one. We are not doing the class one for now. You can let me actually copy this one as well for reference. Uh, I also want you to try out this comment here that I have. One second. That I have commented out. I want you to try it and tell me what output comes if you try it with this. Just pasting it here again for your reference. Okay, Alice has shared with us an output. Does anyone else want to share what they have got from here? Also, Alice, do you wanna uncomment this? Let ID is equals to f dot id. I'm gonna paste this again for reference. Why don't you try commenting the second line and uncommenting the first line? I'm trying it out and share what is the error that you get. I think Akhilesh, you'll get your answer from Alice's output here. It says something like the parameter f still contains a value. The value does not have the drop ability and must be consumed before the function returns. So, if you remember, folks, we discussed at the beginning that when we are talking about move, whatever structs are defined, they have abilities, right? Like we discussed something like how characters can fly and all of that. And we discussed these abilities to be primarily copy, drop, key, and store. Okay, so I'll go over one of all of these one by one. So copy basically talks about like normal duplication. Okay, um, drop talks about just removing, right? Dropping the value. Key is basically key and store work in conjunction as a key value pair. Store is basically the global storage, and key is the key to that particular storage. So it works as a key value pair that we see normally. Okay. And here, the thing that is mentioned is that if we are trying to return f.id over here, this function is not a function that can be allowed unless this f has the capability to get dropped before this function ends. So this is why I was talking about the scopes, which work quite differently. So we need to actually drop this value. So this is a capability that we need to add in our struct. So the way that we will be doing this is by this struct fellow needs to have drop as a capability. So we are modifying this to say something like struct fellow has drop. Can you modify your struct to have this and then try and run it again and then share what the output looks like? Alice, can you remove this debug error by just doing a simple use at the beginning? This use std debug first of all, and then just do that and run this command again so that we can just uh, run this without that. And then second thing that you have, no function, no fellow. What is this? Yeah, just try this without this, I think. Just modify this function and add this. Nope, I just tested it. The previous one is working fine for me. What have you named your this? It is my ADDR in my case. What have you named your uh, variable? Make sure you have added the use statements. Yeah, this as Telil has given the output, this should be working fine. Telil, can you try one more thing that I have mentioned over here? Can you try this piece of code? Let me share it with you. Telil, that's because this script underscore fn, it's saying it has been defined previously. Just rename the function. You should be able to get the output, but I want to mark this as an example, and I'll get to why we are running it like this and not like that. Like this is definitely a much easier way to get the ID, right? If we have the fellow object, then you can just get any attribute that you want from that, right? So why are we running particular getters from that? So let's just mark this an example. I'll come to it again in the next class as well. But yeah, just try running this as well once on your systems as well. And then I think we can touch a little bit upon the generic uh, constructors that we have here as well. Okay, cool. Okay, folks. So I'll move to the generic struct here for now. I will talk a little bit around the access control and ownership things maybe in the next class because we do not have a lot of time left. So, okay, let's just get very quickly started on the generic struct. So, in our previous struct, the way that we defined it was that, okay, we have specified that there are particular attributes of like particular data types like U64, U8, and bull. But let's assume that we need to create a struct, but we do not know about the data types at this moment. And this is something that would happen when we actually pass the values in it. Then how can we create something like that? So here we have the capability of creating a generic struct where we do not need to actually specify what will be the data type, but instead we just need to like pass that number of that number of arguments. That's the only thing you kind of require. So in this case, what we are talking about is let's define a struct called as class. And we have defined that there would be two different variables, quality and learning. But we have not set the data type here. We have just mentioned it to be T1 and T2. Now, quality can be something which might be a number. Learning can mean something to be, again, it can be a number. It can quality can also be like a boolean, whether it's a quality thing or if it's not a quality thing, or it can be something else as well. So we are not defining what that is at this moment. This is like something that we have very purposefully kept it to be this way so that we can define it at a later point of time. So I'm just again gonna copy this piece of code. I'm gonna paste it in our chat so that you can create this generic struct. Um, and next thing that we need to talk about is again the constructor that we need to set for this. So again, this is our constructor, very similar to our previous new fellow constructor. Only difference like how we have specified it here to be this. We are just gonna have um, this T1 T2 first written over here, and then we are again passing it as for a T1 T2, and our response object would also be my class with T1 and T2, and then we are just doing a return over this. Because the name of the attribute is same as the name of the parameter, we can directly pass this. And this is different than how we're doing it in build in bear, where we have to pass it separately again, like build in bear colon VIB. If this would have been named, let's say learn, then we would have to do something like learning colon learn over here. But now we do not need to do that because we have the exact same names. The notation is a bit different because here we have to keep T1, T2 as well as over here in terms of the syntax. But yeah, it is more or less the same stuff that we are doing as compared to this normal struct. The only difference here, again, you do not need to define the data types right now. So I'm again gonna copy paste this function to you folks. And the last task for today, once you take down a couple of these things down, can be to to create your own test function to set up a new class and pass certain um, data for this, and you can see how it works. And you can create another function to return or to do certain actions over this as well. So I'm just gonna wait for a few minutes for you folks to try and attempt this out. Hi, folks. For who were not able to join in time, I might just create like a repository of like a GitHub repository or something of all the codes that we are writing during this time. And I will maybe share it back with the team to then be shared with you. So yeah, maybe just like a very simple move, small repository for whatever codes you are writing. Okay, folks, has anyone tried creating a test function for this? So basically two functions, right? One we are talking about a test function, um, which will just do something like first of all creating things, and then like yeah, printing something like this out, similar to what we have over here. The function would look a little bit different. The call would look a little bit different. So anyone wants to try it out from the system, how it would look like. I would highly recommend folks to write the code themselves and not do like control C, control V. That yeah, I like set things up, blah blah blah, because that probably might not be the most honest way of doing this course, more or less. Say, does anyone wanna try this piece of code? Do you think it would work if we try something like this? Sorry, it's not gonna be ID. Let's give it something like quality. Yeah, actually maybe change this also. Don't forget the drop again over here because it would not allow you to access things. What's the error that you're getting, Alice? Oh, is it working now? Your code? Still getting any issues? So as Alice has pointed out, your struct, like this thing needs to start from a capital letter. Anyone else who has written the code for this, given it a shot, running into any issues with the struct and generic struct examples that we are working on? After this, yeah. So this needs to be the name of your module. So what is your name of your module? So that is what it would be. My address and then the name of your module. This is the name of module. So just check the top line. So module, my address, and then whatever is name of the module here. Yes. Just like how you have done used the drop for your previous this thing, you have to use the drop here as well. Perfect. We are using drop because before the function ends, you need to make a way for it to basically uh, the variable needs to be consumed before the function ends. So whenever we are defining things, it's fine. Whenever you're defining structure, it's fine. But when you're trying to use the attributes for it, then it will start giving you this drop thing because it's exactly what the message is saying, that it will stay, it contains a value and it does not have the ability to drop, and it has to be consumed before the function returns. And it is in line with what Akhilesh was asking, that how are we managing any sort of memory? What happens to those variables? What is the garbage management system like for any language? We will be moving into the other capabilities very slowly as well, starting off with move and more around move, copy, and all of this. We discussed around a little bit around we discussed a little bit around copying and duplication and stuff. We discussed around pass by value and pass by reference. But next class, we will start off with the concept of the word move itself and how the variables here have ownership. Not that it's like a call by, it's like a pass by reference that, okay, the value won't, if you change the value here, it would get changed over there as well because we are not passing a copy, but a variable ownership. So if a function holds that particular variable, and if that function passes that variable on to someone else, the ownership of the variable, you would not be able to access the variable. So there are a couple of way more interesting concepts that are there in Move in terms of the way assets work, and that is something that we would start looking into from the next class. We'll define our resources. Resources are special type of structs which cannot be duplicated, which cannot be dropped or duplicated. So we'll cover a little bit around all of these things in the next class. So yeah, Kiran, are we good to end?